And that really, in the end, we would draw closer to you. That's really what we're here for. So we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen? Okay. I'm just going to, and I hate doing this to you, because I hate generally doing this, but I'm going to go over one verse. Right? I'm just going to go over one verse because it's a verse virtually everyone knows, and everyone knows Jesus said it, and I think the church generally, not you, other people, generally has a problem implementing it. I don't think we think about it very deeply or very well. And so, we're just going to pound this verse like a dead horse. It's like, wow. I'm sorry. Is it lunchtime yet? Because I'm just... So, whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets. Okay. That's all we're going to go. Whatever you want people to treat you, treat them that way. Now, here's the thing. Rabbi Hillel, let me read this first, because this makes me, this kind of stuff makes me happy. It probably shouldn't, but first of all, this is our go-to ethic, right? If you don't know what to do, how to act in a situation, at a place, or whatever, this is what we Christians do. We do to others what we would want them to do to us, right? This is our ethic. This is our immediate, this is how I treat people, this is what I do, this is how I help, this is how I don't help, this is how I do whatever. This is it, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unpack this idea, because I think we become so familiar with it, it becomes a cliche, and then we don't think about it, and I think we need to think more about it. So, first of all, let me contrast it with, like, as you'll all be familiar with Rabbi Hillel, right? He was a rabbi popular in Jesus' time. Now, Rabbi Hillel said this: "What is hateful to you, do not do to anyone else. This is the whole law. All the rest is commentary. Go and learn it." Right? But Jesus changes it very subtly, but it's huge. He goes from the negative to the positive. Now, there's a lot of people who are thinking, yeah, we need to be more positive, but here's the problem. Going positively heaps up so much more stuff that you've got to do than the negative, right? The idea that Rabbi Hillel said is, live and let live. Basically, just don't bug people, which is basically, I think, one of the commandments to live in Washington State. Don't bug me, and I'll try not to bug you, right? I grew up here. It's how we roll. Now, I mean, it's true. We are not a friendly state. I mean, we're just not. I don't know why, and I'm one of them, right? I know all the Californians come up and they're like, wow, I thought this was friendly. No. Whatever gave you that, we're not friendly. So anyway, welcome to Calvary Chapel Square. We are, they're not, So anyway, Jesus turns it positive. So when it's, live and let live, whatever you hate, don't do that to other people, that's sins of commission, right? Don't go forcing your sin nature on other people. But what Jesus does is he adds sins of omission. He says, when you see something that you would like somebody to... I trip myself up all morning doing this. If you see something that you would like somebody to do for you, you need to go do that. Now that is a lot more stuff to do than just, don't bug me, I won't bug you. That adds, right? And it's our ethic. Now here's the problem. I don't think we think about it very often. And let me give you some examples. Let's say, let me show the difference between commission and omission. Let's say you're in a conversation, and someone's talking behind someone's back, right? Now, sins of commission is don't join in with that, right? If you don't want people talking behind your back, don't talk behind their back, right? That's the deal, right? But what Jesus says takes it further. He says, if there's a group of people who are talking behind your back, do you want somebody to step in and stop that? I do. You do that. Like, no, but I can't do that. That's not what Jesus didn't say, unless it makes you feel really uncomfortable. Right? He didn't say that. Now, do you get, that's a small one. Do you now, there is great vistas of sin that I see coming my way when all of a sudden I start to think how I want other people to treat me. I'm like, oh, I want back rubs all the time. I started thinking about all this stuff I want. Anyway, and it just gets larger. So let me kind of give you some examples of kind of outside before I start applying it to our community here as a church. Let's look at outside the community. And you know I'm going to go here if you're here for very long, because let me start with this one. I had a conversation a while ago with this person, and they had really misrepresented who I was and what I had said, and they had told other people that. And so I called them, and I said, listen, you said this, and that is not true. That is the farthest thing from truth. That anybody who knows me knows that is not, and I was upset. I was offended. I was like, why would you tell people that? And in this conversation, this person said to me, well, you have to realize that you're a pastor. And the idea was this, is that he dehumanized me. He's like, you're just this authority figure, and so we don't always treat you like a person. No, and we do that. Now, here's the thing. I do that. Now, because I didn't like that, right? And what I would have rather have done is had that person clarify that with me before he started saying it to other people. And then the other people that they talked to, I would have liked them to come and say, hey, I heard this. Is this true? So I could say, oh, no, that's not at all what I said, right? Okay. So as an authority, I see that and I understand that. I don't like it when people dehumanize me. Now, take this to politics. No! Stop! I don't want to do this. Yeah, this is church. Let's get in a fight. So, what I do, or I try to do with politicians, is not talk behind their backs, and if I'm going to talk bad about them or their policies, I want to understand them first before I disagree with them. And here's how I do not go about it, is listen to MSNBC, Fox News, radio, or Air America, or, any of those other political talking heads because of this. If people want information on me, I don't want them going to other people who just want to take me down, no matter what. And they will lie to take me down through misinformation. And let me tell you, all those radio shows, those political talking heads, I have rarely heard one that does not just lie. And this is what I mean by they lie. Have you ever been wrong? I've been wrong. Have they ever been wrong? Not according to them. They never come on and say, you know what, we said this and that was wrong. I guarantee you they do not get it right all the time. You know how I know? Because I don't get it right all the time, right? I know what it is to be human. I know really smart people, they don't get it right all the time. I screw up sometimes. I say things that I shouldn't say. I say things that are incorrect. And I have to, not just like, oh, I got the number wrong. Or, literally, I have found that my stance on things have been wrong. And I've had to change them. And I've really encouraged people to make life decisions sometimes in stances that now I'm backing up from a little bit. And I'm like, whoa. And so I realize I'm fallible, and when I listen to those other guys, they never say they're wrong. All they do for the whole radio program is show you how they're right. And they never say anything good, unless it's a backhanded compliment, about their opponents. And their opponents aren't that bad. I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican, right? So we've got this whole political climate in America, and what I see is that I have a tendency to do to them what other people do to me, and I don't like that. I got to stop. I'm done. I've got to stop treating them like dehumanized authorities. I don't mind if some people come to me and they say, so help me explain what's going on here, and I tell them and they're like, that's wrong, that's a dumb thing to do. I'm okay with that. But first understand what you're talking about before we pronounce it, and don't go to people who just want to cut it down. Right? So if I want that for me, I need to start doing that with the politicians that are my authority and over me. Right? And so I don't see Christians doing this. I don't see this in the Christian community. I see us demonizing everybody else just like everybody else does. I don't see us taking our ethic like anyone else. And I don't care what political spectrum you're from, we do it. They do it. We don't do it, right? We're Christians. This is our ethic. Jesus is saying, these are the people who want to be in heaven. If you don't like this, you don't want to go to heaven. Literally. He's saying, this is the citizenry of heaven. These are how these people act. So if you don't want to do this, or you don't want to act like this, what you'll do is you'll get to heaven, and you'll look in and you say, I don't want to be there. I thought this was heaven. And God's like, this is my heaven, not yours. Go away. Right? And so this is what Jesus is doing. He's recalibrating. He's reprogramming our thought process. And he says, this is, now I understand, I get it wrong sometimes. I don't always do my due diligence, but I know where I'm wrong, at least at this point. When I start dehumanizing people, talking behind their backs, and starting to... Now listen, our political situation is a mess. It is. But it's not going to be fixed by following the people who put it in the mess, right? It's not going to be... if the people that I want to vote in get in, is not going to fix the situation unless it's Jesus, right? And then he's going to come and wipe everybody, with the iron rod. He will come, but that's his point. That's his deal, not mine. He'll come when he comes. But now I have to learn to treat other people the way I want to be treated, and that's all I can do. I can't make them adopt my viewpoint. I can let my viewpoint be heard. I can strenuously express it, and I think we should do all that. I think that we should have opinions, and I think that we should be good at being able to communicate them and have a well thought out understanding. We should do all that, but then we should also treat other people the way we want to be treated, right? And as a Christian community, and I'm just painting with a broad brush, I don't think we do that in our politics either, right? And we need to stop. We need to repent and say, this is our go-to ethic. We can't treat other people like that. The whole, we're dealing with the whole homosexual marriage thing and sexuality, and I went over that last week, and so I'm not going to go over that this week. But listen, I need to treat them just like I want them to treat me. Do I want to have them treat me with respect and dignity? Yeah. So what does that mean? I treat them with respect and dignity. Do I want them to just agree with me at anything I say because they have to? No. I don't expect that. And so I give that to them. And so this is our ethic, right? When I'm dealing with other people, do I want people to strenuously disagree with me when they strenuously disagree? Yeah. I don't want them to be looking at me smiling and say, oh, yes, that's nice. Turn around and say, what an idiot. I want them to say, what an idiot. Where do you get that? I would much rather have that conversation. Right? And so if I'm going to do that, then I've got to, be honest with them. But I want them to hear me out. So I'm going to hear them out. I want them to be interested in what I'm saying and not just stamping me a homophobe just because I don't agree with their lifestyle. I don't agree with their lifestyle, but you know what? I don't agree with the other couple living together outside of marriage just as much. I disagree with that lifestyle just as much. I don't hate them. I just think they're doing something wrong and they're going to pay for it. Same thing. Right? I'm not angry at them. I don't think that it's the biggest issue in their lives. The biggest issue in their lives are, do they believe in Jesus? Once they believe in Jesus, they start down a road I don't have to worry about. Except for as my brothers and sisters, right? You know, I've still got to talk to them and have conversations, and we're still going to argue about what's right and wrong. That's fine, but it's not my job to change them, thank God. It's God's, right? So it's while I am never afraid to spout my opinion, and I think we all know that, I don't shoulder the responsibility of being God. And it's like, this is what I know. This is how I understand it. So you do with it as you will. I don't have to make that decision for you. It's not my decision to make. It's between you and God, right? And so these kind of things, that's people outside of my community of Jesus followers here, right? And so we as Christians, listen, they know we believe this. They know we believe treat other people the way we want to be treated. And when we don't do that, they know we're not doing right. They all know this verse. So we've got to stop and think about it. Now let's look at, because I want to get a little deeper into the thinking, because sometimes it looks like we have to actually violate the verse to actually obey the verse. And you're like, whoa, double speak. Yes, I just read 1984, and I'm just excited. So anyway, here's the deal. Let me kind of give you my thought process as I think through this, and hopefully it will help you think through it, or you may be so far past me that you're just like, yeah, whatever. Feel free to daydream at this point. Okay, in our faith community, as Jesus followers, and I mean anywhere at the church, and we'll look at this church in particular, but anywhere you go, let's say people come in churches, right, and they come in, let's say you're new, and you sit down. And then you leave, and your first time at church, nobody says anything to you. Nobody greets you. Nobody, they just kind of, politely let you be, right? And you're driving home, and you look at your spouse like, that is a horrible church. They didn't say hi. My car is really confused. So, so anyway, and you start complaining about, here's the problem with that. If I just know this and understand this in the very beginning, shallow sense of the word, when you come in, if it's your first time, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to leave you alone. You know why? I'm an introvert. When I go to new places, I don't want to be mobbed by people shaking my hand. I just don't, it makes me uncomfortable. I don't really like that. I'm not a good chatter. Like it's easy for me to meet you and say, what do you think about the whole homosexual issue? Tell me. That doesn't bother me. I'm interested in that, but how's your day going? I'm just like, I don't care. I really want to know. And it's not because I don't care about you, but I care about you in the sense of I want to know where you're coming from. I want to know what, right? It doesn't make me deeper because I really admire people who can chat. It's not better or worse. It's just who I am. Does that make sense? So if you come in here and I treat you the way I want to be treated, I will not say hi to you. No, it's true. Or I might say hi in passing. I might warn you about the pastor. I would want to know. But I would not come up and say, oh, this is me. I'm an introvert. Now, I know it doesn't look like this. Listen, I perform, right? Right now, I'm performing. But when I get down off the pulpit, it is hard for me to engage everybody because when I'm done, this is my human nature. I just want to go home and hide. I've done all what I can, and now listen, it's wrong of me to do that, and I'll explain that in a second. It's wrong of me to do that, but that's my good. That's just what I feel. Does that make sense? It's how I'm made. I'm an introvert. I really enjoy deep. That's a value statement that I don't want to make. I really enjoy talking about matters that are controversial and moving and stuff like that. The chit-chat I don't like. But again, it's not because I don't think chit-chat's good. I think it is good. It helps us to be friendly, right? If you have a bunch of me, it's just like Clint Eastwood all over the place where we just stare at each other. Totally. That's all it would be. I'm glad you're not me, right? Now, so when people do that, they'll call me and say, your church was so unfriendly. I said, well, how friendly were you? How long have you been in the church? Because if you come into an unfriendly situation and you want it to be friendly, what does Jesus tell you? Be friendly. He doesn't say, unless you're new. He doesn't. But we think because we're new, we can complain about it with us not being friendly. Where does it say that? Nowhere. Right? It's just because of our social mores but listen, if you were to stop and you were to think, what Jesus is saying is, if you come into a community of Jesus followers and you see something, that's what you do. You're like, oh, they need to be more friendly. Jesus say, yeah, you're the man or the woman. Take these introverts, make them a little more extroverted. Right? Now, sometimes I have to deny myself, and I've realized this, and it's not a burden for me, so when I come up and I chat with you, I don't want you to think, oh, he hates this. I don't. I have learned that people want to know or sometimes be greeted by the pastor and they kind of want to talk a little bit. I understand that. I understand that it's not me, it's the position. Because when they do get to know me, they usually just go down the road, But I understand that I can't just treat other people the way I want to be treated, except I would like people to kind of understand how I work and work with me that way, right? So I would like extroverts to realize, oh, he's an introvert. I won't go and complain about how he never talks to people or chats, right? So now I turn that around and I say, oh, so I know that there are extroverts that come in this door. They would like me to go chat with them, and I would like them to understand, so I'll do that. And I can do that. Right? And it's not onerous, right? It's not like I've got to, shovel a ton of coal. It's just something I have to learn. I have to become, I have to die to myself and say, hey, and it's not bad. Once I learn how to chat or once I get into a conversation, I really enjoy it, but it's not but because of this ethic, I've had to say, I can't just act like the way I want to act. I have to understand how other people want to be treated and do that, and that means sometimes I have to be less introverted and more extroverted. And that's okay. It's great because it makes me not such a jerk. It makes me a little more greater than I was before. Because I'm denying myself and I'm, becoming more like Jesus because I'm sure he was an introvert, extrovert, or whatever vert, there is. He was all of them because he understood it. So does that make sense? So when we go to church, when we come into church, we need to start thinking in the way of not, I think the church should be this. I think the church, unless you think, oh, I think the church should be this, and I better get doing it. But if you don't want to say, I better get doing it, then don't complain about anybody else doing it. Because you're literally complaining about you. I may not see what you see. It's a good bet I don't see what you see. Right? Now, we have this the auction going on out there, and I was amazed because the pieces of paper matched the cups in color. It took me about 10 minutes. I'm like, because if it was me putting that up, there'd just be a bunch of coffee cups and, handwritten notes, and it was just, and I appreciate that. I mean, I would never do it, right? It's not my thing. I wouldn't think about it, but it's kind of, I like that they don't do things my way. I understand that, and it helps me now relate to Lorna because she doesn't do things the way that I would do it. And I'm like, oh, well, she would like me to be color coordinated. How am I going to do this? And so, but what it does is it expands who we are and our ability for empathy and our ability to relate and whatnot. Now, let's take it through some other situations. Like, let's say you got bad breath. Do you want somebody to tell you? I do. Because I don't want to crop dust it, throughout my day. Right? Are you willing to tell someone they have bad breath? Yeah, everybody's like, I remember a long time ago, Tony, one of our elders, deeply, I love that guy. Such a great guy. But one Sunday morning, I was talking to him, he's like, whoa, man, you got bad breath. And then he goes out and he gets me some gum, and I loved that. I knew he loved me, right? Because he didn't allow me to just go and offend everybody else that Sunday morning with my breath. But will we do that? And then you take that to a deeper extent. Do we know other Christians that have such a lifestyle that is literally killing them? But we're like, I don't want to make waves. Is that how you want to be treated? Somebody watches you going for putting your finger on the hot stove because it looks interesting, and they're just like, let's not make him uncomfortable. Let's just let him get some third-degree burns. That's what Jesus would do, right? Listen, that's not our ethic. I want somebody to say, hey, dummy, don't touch the stove, you idiot, right? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with you calling me an idiot if I'm being an idiot. That reminds me of a time when there was a guy who used to come to our church a long, long time ago, and he was the most contentious person I have ever met. It was unbelievable. He could argue with anything. But he was real honest about it, right, and stuff like that. And I thought, this guy probably doesn't get along with anybody. So I was like, I'll put up with him. I'll talk to him and I'll give him, because after a while, you just get tired of it. But I'm like, you know what? If I was this contentious, I would want people to put up with me, right? So I put up with him, and I would actually, talk with him, and he would give his opinions, and they would just be like, I would be like, oh, you gotta be joking me. I'm contrary, but you like contrary and steroids. It's like, what are you thinking? But anyway, but I was like, but I want to be this guy's friend, right? And I want him to find a place here, and I just hope he doesn't talk to anyone new. And, but I had to focus on this guy, but one day I was up talking about 1 Timothy 3 about, eldership. And I gave the qualifications, and then, so for about 20 minutes, and I talked for about 20 minutes of, by the way, this is how the church works, because I wanted people to understand how our authority structure works in the church. And so I did that sermon, and I get this email from him, and he says, hey, I come to Calvary Chapel because I want to hear the word. Am I going to hear the word now, or is it all going to be just about you and your opinion? And I'm just like, and he'd been coming for years, right? Now, and I wrote him back, and I said, listen, you can think that I don't teach well, or that I don't understand the scriptures, but you can't say that I don't pull out the scriptures and start teaching. That's the, so, and I was, Michael remember this, because I started, complaining to Mike, and I was like, this guy, burp, burp, burp. And I realized, I'm talking behind his back. So I made an appointment with him. because I wanted to call him a jerk, because he's being a jerk, right? Literally. And I was like, I can't talk behind his back. If I'm going to call him a jerk, and I think he's being a jerk, I'm going to say it to his face, so then I'm not talking behind his back. So I call him in, and he comes, and I say, first of all, that's a silly thing to say, that I'm not teaching scriptures. Again, I may teach them wrong, or you may not like the way I deliver it, or whatever, but listen, we're always opening the scriptures. I'm always you just can't, it's silly. He says, you think I said what I said? I said, yeah. And he turns around, and he starts leaving, right? And I'm like, wait, there's more. There's more. You're a jerk, too. Because he was, and he is, and someone should tell him, quit being a jerk. No one wants to be around you. You're obnoxious. Right? If I'm being obnoxious, tell me. I might have a good reason. And then you have to apologize, which probably is going to happen. No, but here's the thing. If you love me and you want me to be more like Jesus and you don't want to just leave me, you can call me whatever you want. And you can come to me and you can say, I think that was the dumbest thing you said. And then I might immediately say, well, you're a dumb jerk too. But through this conversation, we'll get to know each other. And it's not going to be, hopefully, we might get to know each other. Like, yeah, you are a jerk. And sometimes I'm a jerk. Just ask my family, right? Sometimes I'm really impatient, and it just affects everybody, and it's, I hate that. But it's okay. We're family. We ought to know. And I don't want to make this caustic environment where we're walking around saying, and you're ugly. I can't help it. This, you got to take that, and while I do want to be, if I'm going for the fire and I'm going to, put my finger on it, if I'm just ugly and I can't change it, just keep it to yourself, right? I know I can't change it, unless you say, well, why don't you doll yourself up a little bit more? Trim that nose hair. That's okay. But, there's some things that you just, social graces are kind and, you just don't need to deal with it. There are some things to where we can just say, that's just Hans. And I want to love him, so I'm just going to ignore that, and I know he does that. But it's not like I'm going for the hot stove. You understand what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, he can't dress himself. I don't know who dresses him in the morning. I'm assuming it's himself because his wife looks lovely, but what are you going to do? Put up with it, right? So I get that kind of stuff, and that's fine and good, but far too often we just don't want to be uncomfortable, and so we won't tell other people what we would want them to tell us if we were doing that or in that situation. It's the American way, right? When you get money, this is how we treat each other. When you don't have money, you just got to yell at each other. Their relationships are much more honest. When I find the more money you get, the less honest and the more nuanced all relationships get, right? You say stuff, but you got to say it in a certain way. Anyway, so back to this, right? Treat other people the way you want to be treated. What does that look like to you? It takes some thought. It's not easy. Because you can start going down in levels like I do. Somebody walks in the door, they're new, my immediate reaction is leave them alone because that's the way I want to be. If I come into a new church, I just want to sit there for a couple of weeks, see if I even like these people, right? And I might go down the road and I don't want to, make a big thing. If it's just, but I realize, I want people to accommodate who I am, so sometimes I want people to not just treat me the way they want to be treated. Sometimes, as an introvert, I want the extroverts to just say, give him some space, he looks a little grumpy, right? And so, I'll then, if I see an extrovert coming in, I'll say, oh, well, that looks like somebody that would like to meet, the pastor. So I'll go down and I'll meet them, and then sometimes, I'll just, you can go in this cycle of thinking, for a long time. Right? And you start thinking this, but what if that, and in this situation, what? it's a good thought. You know why? Because what you're doing is you're trying to think about how to love other people. You're just like, hey, how do I want to treat? I want to be treated this way. How do I want to treat you? Sometimes I want to be uncomfortable, but then sometimes I just can't help it, and I want you to just deal with that. So how do I recognize that? How will I recognize? And what you'll do, hopefully what I've done is just take one small verse and really confused you, so you have to go back, read the verse, and say, what was he talking about? Right? That's okay, because we need to generally, and I'm painting with a broad brush, as the American church, learn how to act like what Jesus asked us to act like, rather than the rest of the pagan, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but the pagan world. We take our cue from them in politics, in social mores, in far too often. Far too often. What we look like should be entirely different. When people come in, they should be met with this wall of confusing love. And I mean that. You understand this when you're a parent, don't you? I love that kid. That's why I'm going to kill him. But you'll never forsake them. You'll never, but you love them. But you're just going to spank, well, unless you don't spank. But we loved our kids on their butts all the time. And I didn't lie. This is going to hurt you way more than me, man. Don't do it again. My kids always knew I loved them. Sometimes harder than others, So, anyway, hopefully, let's see. I think I'm done. You're all like, please, you're done. You were done a long time ago. If I would read my notes. So, you know what? Let me leave you with this last idea. The homosexual thing, gay marriage or whatever, is such a big deal in our community or our society right now, right? Maybe as Christians, we should try to go and understand them and ask them questions and root out their philosophy more. I guarantee you that if you'll start paying attention to them and caring about what they say and what they understand and think about what marriage is, should be, and stuff like that, they might want to hear what we have to say, right? But let's be the first to show, and I am not saying agree with them, right? I don't agree with it. It's not within our. God says it's wrong. There's just no way of getting around it. They try to get around it. There's just no way of getting around it. And I gave you the reasons last week, why I did that. And if you want to go through that again, please call me. I'm more than happy. I think I've got a great way of explaining why it is without being inflammatory. And it leaves them understanding where we're going and who God is to a greater extent. I truly believe that what I went over last week does that. So if you want to go over that. But here's the thing. I want them to know that I care about them and understand who they are, and that what I am asking of them is huge and difficult and very hard. What we ask of those people who have a propensity to have sex with the same marriage, what I do is I put myself in their shoes, and if you said, Hans, it's all homosexual in heaven, and God's not going to allow straight people in heaven, I'm like, we've got a problem. Seriously. I have a problem. Big problem. And so when I look at them and I turn around and I say, this is what I'm saying to them, I'm like, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot to ask. If I'm going to ask that, they better understand a lot of what I say rather than just, no, God hates that. God, does that make sense? It's not, and I don't ever water down the message. It's one of my problems. Is I'll just come out and say, no, it's just not the way it is. I even tell them Darwin hates them. Darwin wants you to die out. Not me. right? And so, but I don't mind, coming and having a good conversation, but I really empathize with those people. I mean, it kills me to have to say that. I hate saying it. And I even tell them, I said, man, I'm sorry. I understand why, and I get it and stuff like that, but when I put myself in your shoes, I have a hard time with it. Right? Does that make sense? But this is how I'd want to be treated. Right? It's if I was in their shoes, that's how I would want somebody to approach me. I wouldn't want them to just start quoting verses at me that mean nothing to me. Right? The scriptures are dear to us, and they shape our very lives, our opinions. They are a mirror. They are the glorification of who God is as we see Jesus within the Word. And it is I love this Bible. Right? I love it. There's nothing I like more than getting down in my office and lighting the incense and reading and drinking coffee and reading what other people think about. I love this. They don't. They don't. They don't love this. Why would I expect them to? Why would I use this as if they do? It doesn't. The Word of God is active, and it's sharper than any two-edged sword, but it's cutting me, not them. Right? It's how I apply it to me that it's alive and active. What I want to do is show them my love for it and how much it's blessed me and how much it's shaped my life, and it's given me understanding of what life is and how I'm to act in life. And how can I do that if I'm just offending them without needing to offend them just for offense sake? If I haven't sat down and thought enough to say, hey, let me relate this to you in such a way that you can understand it. You may not agree with it, but at least I'm not just, condemning the flesh and forgetting about the spiritual things behind that, because that's what we're at war with, not the flesh. But the Christian community continually deals in the flesh. And it's our weak arena. We win in the spiritual arena. We lose in the flesh. Let's learn how to engage in that, right? So that's my thing. And all that from this verse, it literally does affect your whole life and how we're to act and what we're supposed to do. And it will revolutionize your way of even acting the more you think about it. And the more you look at other people, and the more you empathize, and the more you say, it's like chess, right? Easy to understand the moves, impossible to ever master, right? What mastery means is you just know it better than the other guy. But that's what this one verse will do. So, as somebody said to me before, let's stop playing checkers while they're playing chess. Right? Let's think. Let's understand this. It doesn't take a scholar. I understand it. Right? It doesn't take a lot of brain power. It just takes time, the love of God, and the love of other people. And that'll just set you on your way. And it will, truly, revolutionize how you treat people. So, in the church, let's lift up the people who are doing this instead of the people who just ape the other culture out there. It's kind of an odd person, isn't it, sometimes, in the church that acts like this? Sometimes, I won't go on. I'm telling you, it occupies, that I've just been thinking about that one verse, because I wanted to go through more verses, because I hate just going through one verse, to tell you the truth. I hate the one verse preacher. Just like, come on, you can do more. Work a little bit, But the more I got into it, the more I realized I didn't want to change gears. I just wanted to camp here, and I wanted to throw out as many of my thoughts as I could, and hopefully it'll jumpstart yours in certain directions. And so Let's pray and worship. Lord, you are so good. When you just take this one idea and present it to us, and it's revolutionary truly in our ethic of who we are, and it's so easy to understand but difficult to master. It's amazing, this word of yours. It is alive and active, and it does influence our whole lives. You've described the citizenry of heaven, and this is what we are. Let us embrace this and shed those shackles that society has put on us that ruins our ability to glorify you and does not enhance it. And so, Lord, I pray that this church would be a church that loved confusingly, that we would just lavish all the love that we can on each other. Amen? Amen. Okay. We're going to take communion. And what that is,